I didn't expect my last video on Hunt to do as well as it did. It kind of blew up. It's the best video that I have on my entire channel as far as views go. And at the time when making it, I sort of just kind of shit it out, to be honest. That was kind of the point. I wasn't interested in playing Hunt all that much anymore, and I certainly wasn't interested in making videos for Hunt anymore. And that was a hard decision to make because a lot of the algorithm's influence of my YouTube channel is based around Hunt. I can't really get views for anything else. My entire channel is built on that. And so I had to make the decision to essentially start over with something else or continue with a game that doesn't look good with the finished product. And I pour my heart and soul into these videos, and then at the end of the day, they just don't look good. And that sucks. But making that video was just sort of a send off. It was all it was supposed to be. That sort of changed when I looked at the comments for that video because it got a lot of hate for the most part, which is fine and good and reasonable. I didn't put my best foot forward. I didn't explain myself as much as I should have with all my points. I was trying to make like an open, free form sort of format with me and my friends to discuss how we were all kind of frustrated with the game. But at the end of the day, they just really kind of wanted to play Call of Duty Zombies at the time, so they weren't interested. I was just kind of in a frustrated mood, as a whole, if I can admit. I didn't really want to make the video. But in seeing the comments on that video, a lot of them were very good. Not as necessarily positive or in agreement with me, but they made a lot of good points, and they articulated their points carefully with a lot of thought. And it felt kind of bad to have made a video that wasn't my best, but also to have this group of new people coming in, seeing that stuff, and then replying with really good comments that I really appreciate in a lot of ways. So this video is essentially just a response to those people in the comments who had goodwill and good intentions, which you don't really see in comment sections stereotypically. But I'll take it. I guess I don't really deserve it for that video, so maybe I can make up for it now. The ironic thing is that this video is going to get like 12 views because that's how the YouTube algorithm works, I guess. Whereas the last one got nearly 2,000, but it has like a 80% dislike rate, I think higher. Which is understandable because essentially all I did in that video was bitch. I mean, I can admit that. And I was bitching about shotguns in particular, which people likely got offended by, disliked, clicked away, which is understandable. Regardless of my beliefs about game meta, I think one thing that needs to be said out loud and understood by most people is that using a shotgun is a low skill way to play. There's no way around it. It's just a fact about gaming. You're sacrificing the need to be accurate for the sake of increased damage with the caveat that you have to get close. And it's just a low skill way to play. I don't know how else to explain it. If you can't accept that, then we're just not going to be compatible here. You can just leave your dislike and go. But the thing that people need to understand about me, in my opinion, is that I have no disrespect for people who are lower skill at games. In fact, the exact opposite. I think it's an incredibly respectable way to play to just accept that you're not as good as your friends or the average player, but to still play regardless. I have the majority of my friends don't even have 1.0 KDs, and I still like playing with them. I think they're good for what they do, and there is room for a shotgun player on your team, whether it be to cover an objective inside the bounty room or make those rush plays that cause chaos in the battlefield. It doesn't matter. I don't have any ill will towards shotgun players, and I think there's a necessity for them in the game. I think there's always going to be casual people who want to play casually, and that's fine. There needs to be room for them. I form my opinions not just so that I can enjoy the game more, but I want the entire community to enjoy the game more, and I want the community to grow. I want the most enjoyment possible. So with that in mind, and in an effort to create constructive feedback, this is going to be a list of my grievances with the game and ways that I believe they could be improved upon for the greater health of the game. The first of which would be the ability to shut off motion blur. I suspect that this is the number one reason why my videos look bad, and they undoubtedly look very bad for the most part. Off the top of my head, my Aftermath video I think is a really solid video as a video, but I have such a hard time recommending it because it really does just look bad. And on top of that, there were lighting issues in that one because the gamma feature wasn't introduced yet, which was a great step in the right direction. I just want more of that because motion blur is a standard within console gaming at this point. I can't even think of a game off the top of my head that forces you to have motion blur. But it would be my number one feature. If you added that, I would immediately start making hunt videos again. I would fight through the meta that I think is bad and the glitches that I think hinder the experience greatly, and I'd be happy to return to making videos that this time hopefully look decent. Number two would be the swap glitch, and I've talked about that in videos before, so I'm just going to cut to a clip of that. I'm so hard. No, the whole clip. Ever get that glitch where like you put some... Alright, the video had copyrighted music, so essentially you switch to a consumable that you want to use, and it doesn't give you that one, it gives you one next to it, and there's like a disconnect between the server and the game, I think, and the only way to switch to the consumable that you actually want is by switching to a weapon or something. I explained it a little bit in the other video, but yeah, just fix that. That's all I want out of it. It's really frustrating, and it happens a lot more than you would think. And the third thing is something I actually forgot to include in my last video, and that's that the game is unstable on console, is the only way I can describe it. If you, while in a game, press the home menu, then you have a good chance of disconnecting from the game altogether. If you use an explosive, you just destroys it. Oh my god.
But that moment is special because there's value in suffering.
Stop it! Shut up!
The game like stutters for some reason when that happens, and the graphics get a little funny for a second, and it often disconnects you. And I've heard recently that they're implementing a reconnect feature, which is good, but you really should attack this at its source and find a way to keep players in the game while also interacting with the home menu. If you're playing on Xbox, you're likely in a party, and you probably have to invite people, or vice versa, join the party yourself, so it's a really bad thing to have. So those are my core complaints about the game outside of the meta, and the rest of this video will be dedicated to discussing the meta, which I think we need to establish a fundamental understanding for everyone, at the risk of redundancy with other players who understand what meta means. I feel like there is a certain group of people who take it at face value. They hear the word when someone says this weapon is meta or whatever. They add it to their lexicon for what that means to them. But I don't think they fully grasp everything about it. At least not everyone does. So this is maybe just to me. Maybe I have a flawed understanding of it. But to me, the meta isn't just one gun is powerful and that is the meta weapon. To me, the meta is every weapon in the game combined, every environment in the game combined, all of the player abilities, their health, their speed. And one thing that people forget to take into account for, is the psychology of the player base. An example of this would be during the Light the Shadows event. I was having a really good time playing during that time period and really did not find all that much frustration in playing. And I attribute that to the fact that a lot of players were out there experimenting with the new weapon, the bow, which I consider to be like a mid-tier as far as skill goes. It's, it requires aiming, but it's kind of a freebie at times. But the fact that players were using that meant that they were foregoing the shotguns that they would normally comfortably play with. And so I got a lot more fair matchups, which I really appreciated. Nothing had changed outside of players wanting to do something. And now that that time period's over, They're returning to the way they used to play, the comfortable, easy, low skill style of gameplay. I have this theory that games have an expiration date. Competitive games have an expiration date, and they go one way or the other, in one direction or the other, too far, and that's what kills them. One is that the skill ceiling is too high for the normal casual player to get into. There's a game like Rainbow Six. I'll be the first to admit to you that I fucking suck at Rainbow Six. I am the worst player you have ever seen. There was no room for me in Rainbow Six Siege because I was so bad that I was holding back my teammates and my friends in every game that I would play. There was no role for me to just be bad at the game and still enjoy it. And when a game pushes away its more casual players, it ends up with a smaller player base and a more toxic community, I would argue. And the game slowly dies. On the other end of the spectrum is the games that cater to their lower skill players in a way where they collide the skill ceiling with the skill floor in a way that makes it so that the game kind of feels meaningless because you're, as a high skill player, using the same kind of stuff that you would make fun of other people for using because it's meta. It's what you're going to use. An example of this would be like Destiny, where there are many two button kill options for you, whether it be sliding with shotguns or shoulder charge while sprinting or using the glacier grenade and the hunter slam, whatever it's called, shadow dive. These are the kind of mechanics that you're going to see in just about every game of Destiny, whether it be a high skill match or a low skill match. They're just going to be everywhere because there really is no alternative. There's no high skill option that will yield you better rewards, more accurate damage applied. It's just too powerful to be in the game. And therefore, the skill ceiling, skill floor collide together. And this is kind of the place that console hunt is at right now, where the low skill options like fanning, levering, shotguns, bomb lance, they're all just hands down better than standard rifle gameplay. They'll net you more kills, they're better for PvE. There's just really no reason to run a rifle outside of nerfing yourself. Before I get into what I think should happen in Hunt Showdown to make the meta better, I just want to talk about people who have this irrational fear of the concept of nerfing. And I've seen this a lot throughout Destiny's history, where it seems like people get so attached to these specific weapons that if you even talk about nerfing their favorite weapon, they immediately go on the defensive, which is strange because nerfing and buffing are the same thing, they're just the inverse of each other. If you nerf the best gun in the game, you're essentially buffing every other gun in the game. They now have the excess viability that was lost from that singular gun. So the very existence of your powerful gun means that its introduction nerfed everything in the game. By being good, nothing else is as viable as the best weapon. And a big fear of mine is that the developers of Hunt Showdown will take the same path that Bungie did when developing Destiny over the last couple years. They unfortunately listened to their own community and their fears of nerfing and allowed well too many weapons and abilities to stay way past their point where they should have been nerfed.
Because democracy basically means government by the people, of the people, for the people. But the people are retarded.
With the selective pressure of a controller, with weapon sway, with reduced limb damage, with muzzle velocity, there's going to be an ever dwindling amount of people who use rifles as their main weapon while playing Hunt. Because there are vastly easier alternatives on the table that can be used just as well as long as you play a certain style of gameplay, which I find boring. I think I've made my case as to why Hunt needs to be balanced a little better on console at this point. And the only question left is how do you go about doing that? And I struggled with this a lot because Hunt is fundamentally in a place where if you change anything, it shakes up everything. For example, the rifles right now are very specifically put into a place of damage where that reflects their place in the meta. The Sparks is the highest tier of the highest skill archetype of rifle. It's the most expensive and highest on the bloodline of the weapons that fire one bullet. And it does the most amount of damage possible without getting a one-shot kill. Everything else, aside from the nitro, fuck the nitro, every other rifle scales down from the Sparks being the best. And if you were to try to buff the rifles across the board in order to incentivize people to use them, you just couldn't do that without interfering with the viability of the Sparks. It would become too good. It would become a one-shot body. And conversely, if you were trying to nerf the lower skill items to reduce their usage in the player base, you would find a similar problem. Take the Terminus shotgun, for example. Being the best shotgun in the game, I would say it spans a wide versatility and variability with its custom ammos, with the smaller version of itself. If you were to try to balance the Terminus shotgun to fall in line, you would find that you were nerfing every other shotgun to a point where they lose entire viability whatsoever. Which, for me, that would be great. But I understand that that's not good for the game as a whole. You want some shotguns to be viable so that way, some players can play with them. And if all of the shotguns are bad, then melee weapons just replace them in the meta. They become the low skill, incredibly high damage output. They're almost all a one hit kill for the most part. So you end up against this brick wall where you can't nerf and you can't buff, but you have to change something. And that's the problem where I came to, and these are the few options that I came up with, ideas that I came up with to try to help this problem without completely destroying what they have. So let's start with shotguns. And first of all, I just want to get this one out of the way. You should just delete slug ammo. The slug ammo does not have a place within the meta. It's trying to bridge the divide between a rifle and a shotgun while still maintaining the one-shot kill from close range, and you just can't balance that. It's got too many good qualities. It can either be really good as it is now, or you can nerf it and it's just nothing. No one will use it if it's nerfed. So it shouldn't be in the game. If you want to use a rifle, just use a rifle. Second thing would be shotguns should deal a little bit of knockback to the player using them. And not like a ton, maybe just like enough to slow your run a bit to prevent really fast rushes with the Terminus with levering. And that's really where I'm targeting here because the combo is really powerful. If you're going to use the Terminus with levering, you shouldn't be rushing so much, I don't think, because it's just such a good combo. I think players who do that should be inside buildings or have already got people in a place where they're going to one-shot them, or maybe they can miss a little bit and two-shot, three-shot them. Something along those lines. I should also note that I don't think any of my ideas are just straight good. I understand that it takes a lot to implement any changes into a game. You have to code it, you have to test it, and then ultimately you have to see how the player base reacts to the changes and how they go about either subverting the changes in one way they could or potentially just changing their gameplay entirely. So I don't want to say any of my ideas are good. These are just ideas. I'm just trying to be constructive here. For the rifles, the only thing I really came up with was I don't want as much RNG associated with aiming a rifle. And when I say that, I mean mostly like hip fire. It seems like hip fire was implemented to nerf players on PC because their aim is so good. It's a lot easier to aim on PC, and therefore, in order to prevent everyone from landing every one of their shots, I think you have to add certain things to prevent that. But on console, it's a lot harder to aim. Your RNG isn't going to be the only factor which prevents you from landing your shot. And I think with that in mind, either a reduction or elimination perhaps, of hipfire inaccuracy could potentially buff rifles to a point where people actually want to use them. And in my head, this idea, which would obviously need a lot of fine tuning, would be instead of having the large reticle that displays the spread of your weapon, if there was a single dot which showed you where your shot was going to land based on the weapon sway of your weapon naturally resting in your hands. And that way, even though the weapon's kind of going all over the place, it's essentially the same concept, except you're guided. You know where to aim, and I think that would add more of a skill set to the aiming factor of the game rather than just relying on putting the enemy in your large reticle and hoping that the game just decides that you got the shot or not. Again, I don't have a lot of faith in this idea. It's just something I'm throwing out there. Also, it should be said that if this idea were to be implemented, obviously you would have to remove this feature when applying fanning or levering to your weapon in order to maintain the high RNG, high damage quality that those perks provide. Now, all these are what I would consider to be like bandages on a bad meta. I don't know if you can possibly fix what exists now on console. The game has been built for PC and it's been ported over, and that's just sort of an unintentional fact about gaming. It's not going to be as tight. And I don't have much faith in any of the things that I've said to fix the game, but I do have faith for this one. This is my ace in the hole idea because it has basically net zero negative qualities to it. And that would be, I think they should rework the way the challenge system works in this game. And in my mind, I envision it as this. Essentially, every day there's a new challenge that gets rotated in. And they're like daily challenges, but they last a week. Every day you get a new one, and the oldest one expires, and there's 7 of them possible. And these 7 challenges would all be things that fine-tune what the hunt experience should be. Using the psychology of the players, wanting rewards from these challenges, you could essentially, without doing anything, get players to play the way that they should be playing, avoiding the comfortable, easy options, and try to push them to push themselves to use the higher skill options. Essentially, have challenges like get 10 headshots. You're not going to get headshots with shotguns, and you're not going to get headshots with melee. And you can have a whole bunch of a whole list that even changes as you want to change the game that moves the players to a higher skill playset. Have things like use a rifle, easy, or spend less than X amount on your entire loadout to avoid people using the really powerful items, the nitro, whatever. The key to this idea would be that you have to have the incentive there, the rewards. And I think you could do this by having the weekly reward be replaced with a cumulative reward for completing X amount of daily challenges. Say 5. Maybe make it even less than a week. Make it you complete 5 daily challenges, not necessarily within 1 week period, within a month, whatever. Make it as accessible as possible. As long as you encourage players to complete these challenges, these high skill set challenges, and then reward them accordingly with essentially the equivalent of like a hunt loot box. You could have all of the things that were rewarded because of the Scrap Peak event with the Iron Reliquaries, whatever they were called. Have people get a chance for blood bonds, a chance for hunt dollars. You could have very slim chances for some of the more valuable items in the game. The skins for players, the skins for weapons. You could have a whole list of things that people know are in there, and it triggers the psychology. They want it because they know there's a chance that I get something really good from this. And maybe it's a low chance. Maybe most of the time you just get the standard, is it 25 blood bonds that you would get from a weekly challenge. But maybe just having that chance that you're going to get a skin for a weapon that you like unlocked and also get that weapon for free. That, I think, would push players to play in the way you want to according to those challenges. And of course, you could use very manipulative psychological tactics like most other games do with their loot boxes, where you have a lot of flashing lights, have a list of items show up, and maybe there's some really good ones that you don't get, just to say, oh, they're there, and you should try to get them. The key would be just don't make them purchasable. Just keep them as a weekly style challenge, and players will want to get them. And I really think this is the most productive way that you can add to the health of Hunt Showdown on console, because it has no downside. I really think that I can say that with my chest, that I can't think of a possible way that that would go poorly. So those are my ideas on how to change the game for the better. I hope most people understand that I'm not just trying to hurt you and your playset. I really do want the best for the game as a whole. And even if you disagree with me, maybe I'm just stupid. I'm not bad guy. I don't want ill will. And so I want to say thank you to all the people who commented in the last video. It really inspired me. And if this video does well at all, maybe I'll continue making Hunt regardless of the problems, because it is a really good game when it's good. So if you agree with anything that I said here and you want to maybe let the devs see it somehow, share this. Spread it around, the YouTube stuff. Give it a like or a dislike even. That's fine too. But thanks for watching, and I'll hopefully see you soon with more Hunt. Hopefully it's funny stuff next time.